She jumped into a black car to flee danger, the driver said. The Mafia boss sent me. Hugh. The rain in Seattle doesn't fall. It seeps into your bones. Tonight, it was trying to drown me. My sneakers slapped against the wet concrete of the parking garage, the sound echoing too loudly in the subterranean dark. My lungs burned. I didn't dare look back. I could hear them, though. 2 sets of footsteps, heavy and purposeful, keeping pace. They weren't even breathing hard. This is what truth gets you. My name is Noor Salgado. I'm an American Sign Language interpreter. I work in family court, a place where people are already broken. Today, I translated for a child, a little girl who watched her mother get dragged into a recruitment program. My hands, moving in the sterile quiet of the courtroom, had spelled out words like locked door and no pay and big white van. I was precise. I was honest. And I had been warned. A subtle brush in the hallway, a man in a suit I didn't recognize, whispering, "You misheard the kid." I hadn't misheard. I had just signed their death warrant, or maybe my own. The garage ramp was a black maw leading up to the street, slick with oil and rain. I burst out onto the sidewalk, gasping, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. The 2 men were right behind me, their shadows spilling out of the garage. A black sedan slid to the curb, so quiet I almost didn't see it until it was right there. The passenger door swung open. I didn't think. I dove in. I landed hard on the leather seat, scrambling to pull the door shut. It closed with a heavy, expensive thud. But my hand was still on the handle when the central lock clicked, a definitive metallic snap. The sound sealed the world out and sealed me in. "Get down," and the driver said. His voice was flat, no panic at all. I hunched over, my heart trying to beat its way out of my throat. Through the rain-streaked windshield, I saw the 2 men stop at the curb, momentarily confused. They looked at the car, then at each other. "They're not going away," I whispered, my voice shaking. "No," the driver agreed. His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. They were calm, assessing. He wasn't scared. He looked bored. "Mister, Ronan Calder sent me to pick you up. Buckle your seatbelt." The name hit me like cold water. Ronan Calder, it meant nothing to me. A blank file. I don't know anyone named Ronan Calder," I said, my hand instinctively going for the door handle I knew was locked. "You have the wrong person. You have to let me out." "I don't." He put the car in gear. "And you need to stay in the car." Behind us, one of the 2 men lifted a small, black device. It looked like a price scanner. He aimed it at our license plate. "What is he doing?" "Scanning the plates," the driver said. "In about 30 seconds, every cop in the city will be looking for this car, reported stolen by a very panicked woman." He glanced at me. "You." My blood ran cold. I stared at the man with the device. This wasn't a simple mugging. This was organized. They weren't just trying to scare me. They were trying to erase me. My only choice was to sit still. I fumbled for the seatbelt and clicked it into place. The driver pulled away from the curb, smooth and unhurried. The car moved through the downtown streets, the wipers keeping a steady, hypnotic beat. The city's neon signs bled into the puddles, turning the world into a watercolor of red and blue smears. It felt like we were moving underwater. The driver touched a button on the console. A phone call connected, but not through the car's main speaker. It was a localized, hands-free device near his ear, but I could hear the voice on the other end, low and clear in the quiet of the car. It was a man's voice, deep, with a rough edge, and completely devoid of emotion. "This is Ronan." I froze. "She's in," the driver said. "Good," the voice replied. It was measured, patient. "Miss Salgado, if you get out of this car right now, those men will take you. You will be put in a container, and you will disappear." My breath hitched. He knew my name. He knew exactly what was happening. I stared at the dashboard, at the glowing console, feeling utterly transparent. I clutched my shoulder bag to my chest, my knuckles white. I could see my own wrist, and it was trembling. A visible tremor that made me angry. "Why me?" I forced the words out. My throat was tight. There was a pause, just long enough for me to hear the static on the line. "Because you didn't lie this afternoon." The simplicity of it was terrifying. He wasn't guessing. He knew. He had been there, or he had someone there. He knew I'd been offered a bribe, and he knew I'd refused it. "Who are you?" "The man who's keeping you alive," the voice said, and the line clicked off. The driver didn't speak. He just drove. He was taking me out of downtown, toward the industrial sector. The road's getting darker. "Where are we going?" "To be safe," he said. He nodded toward the glove compartment. "Open it." My shaking hands fumbled with the latch. It swung open, inside. Sitting neatly on top of the owner's manual was a sealed plastic bag. It contained a clean, burner-style phone, still in its box, and a laminated card. It looked like a temporary health insurance card. My name, Nor Salgado, was printed on it. This wasn't a rescue. It was an extraction. They had a kit ready for me. The sheer, cold competence of it was more frightening than the two men chasing me. The fear was a hot, wild thing. But this was a calculated, cold machine that had just absorbed me into its gears. And right now, it was the only thing keeping me from being shredded. A sudden, violent slam jolted the entire car. I screamed. The driver cursed, low and sharp. "They're still on us!" I whipped my head around. A dark SUV, the same one from the garage, was beside us, grinding against our passenger's side. They were trying to force us off the road, into the concrete pilings of the overpass. The sound of metal screaming against metal filled the car. The driver didn't panic. He wrenched the wheel hard to the left, then slammed the brakes, letting the rain-slick road do the work. Our sedan spun in a controlled, terrifying arc, a full 180 degrees, the tires smoking. The SUV, caught by surprise, shot past us. Before I could even catch my breath, the driver had the car in gear and was accelerating, heading down a dark access road I hadn't even seen. It led toward the water, toward a yard full of stacked shipping containers. The SUV's headlights appeared behind us, but we were already weaving through the maze of steel boxes. He skidded to a stop in a dark patch between two towering red containers. Another car, a nondescript gray SUV, was parked there, engine running, lights off. "Out," the driver ordered. "Now." We didn't run, we moved. Fast and low. We were in the new car in less than 5 seconds. The first driver was gone, blending back into the container yard. A new driver was at the wheel of this one, and we were moving before my door was even fully closed. We drove out a different exit, merging back onto a quiet port road, leaving the black sedan and our pursuers behind in the maze. I leaned my head back against the cool leather, my heart still racing. I had no idea where I was going. I had no idea who Ronan Calder was. I had no phone, no wallet, no identity except the fake one in my pocket. I was completely, utterly out of control. I looked down at my hands, resting in my lap, the tools of my trade. The reason I was in this mess, they were still shaking. But the anger was replacing the fear. Those men, that corporation, they wanted to silence me. They wanted to bend the truth. This Ronan Calder, whoever he was, had just saved my life. But I knew, deep in my gut, that this was just a different kind of cage. I had no control over the car I was in, or the city I was driving through, but I still had the one thing they were trying to take. I had the truth, and I would not let anyone, not the men chasing me, and not the man who just saved me, bend it. The new car was a gray SUV, anonymous and clean. The driver, another man I didn't recognize, didn't speak a word. He drove for maybe 20 minutes, winding up into the hills overlooking the Sound, away from the industrial flatlands. The city lights became a glittering carpet below us, distant and beautiful. We were in a part of town where the air was thinner and the money was older. He pulled into a private underground garage, past a silent security guard, and parked in a designated spot. The safe house wasn't a house. It was a condominium in a tower of dark glass and steel, so new it still smelled of fresh paint and industrial carpet glue. He used a key card to let me into an apartment on the 12th floor. "Wait here. He will come to you," the driver said. The door clicked shut, the heavy, sound-dampening thud of an expensive lock sliding home. I was alone. I let my bag fall to the floor and leaned against the wall, my legs finally giving out. The apartment was sterile, cold. A sweeping view of the water, a gray minimalist sofa, a steel-legged dining table, and a kitchen that looked like it had never seen a hot meal. It wasn't a home. It was a storage unit for a person. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and stared out at the dark water. I could see my reflection in the glass, a pale, terrified woman with her hair still damp from the rain. Why the question beat in my head like a second heart? Why me? The answer was simple. The answer was Viridian Atlas. The name sounded so clean, so official. Viridian Atlas Logistics. They ran the shipping schedules for half the port, but the little girl in court today, the one hiding behind her mother's chair, she wasn't talking about shipping schedules. She was maybe 8 years old. Her hands, when they finally moved, were small and certain. The company lawyer, a woman with shark-like eyes and a $2,000 suit, kept using the phrase recruitment program. The girl's hands signed the farm with the high fence. The lawyer said temporary housing. The girl signed locked door and cold floor. The lawyer smiled, compensation package. The girl's hands trembled, but they were clear. No pay, big white van. Mommy cried. My job isn't to interpret feelings, it's to interpret language. My hands moved, precise and steady, in the sterile quiet of the courtroom. I became the girl's voice, and I did not falter. I relayed every single damning word. I saw the lawyer's smile tighten. I saw her look at another man in the back of the courtroom. The bribe attempt came an hour later, in the hallway. Not the man in the back, but a different one. This one was polished, friendly, smelling of expensive cologne. He cornered me by the elevators. "That was stressful in there," he'd said, his voice sympathetic. He held out a thick, white envelope. Viridian Atlas likes to show its appreciation for the court's hard work, a donation, for your time. We know family court interpreters are tragically underpaid. I looked at the envelope, then at his smiling, empty eyes. "I'm not underpaid." "You must have missigned," he continued, pushing the envelope closer. "The stress of the testimony. It's easy to get a word wrong." The girl was clearly confused. "A farm. It's an orientation center." I left the envelope on the marble railing between us. I signed what she said. His smile evaporated. "You should have taken the donation, Miss Salgado." That was at 3 p.m. By 6 p.m., my debit card was declined at the grocery store. I called my bank. A security freeze. They couldn't tell me why. By 7 p.m., I got to my small apartment in Capitol Hill. The door was ajar. The wood around my deadbolt was splintered and broken. I stood in the doorway, my heart hammering. Nothing was stolen. My laptop was there. The small amount of cash I kept in a jar was untouched, but they had been inside. They had opened my drawers. They had been through my things. A message. At 7:01, as I was standing in my violated living room, my phone buzzed. An email from a scrambled, anonymous address. The subject line was just my name. The body of the email was only 4 words. "We will silence your hands." Silence my hands. The threat was exquisitely cruel. They knew that was worse than death, to take away my voice, my purpose, my craft, to make me a prisoner inside my own head. That's when I had run. I grabbed my bag, my keys, and I ran to my car in the garage. Where I would have gone, I had no idea. I just knew I couldn't stay. And that's when the 2 men in the garage started walking toward me. Now, standing in this glass box 12 floors above the city, I finally understood. This was organized. This was corporate. And I had stumbled right into the middle of it. I hated them. I hated the men in suits who destroyed lives from boardrooms, and I hated the men with guns who did their dirty work in the dark. I hated everything that smelled of the mafia. So why was I saved by one of them, Ronan Calder? I knew the name. Everyone in Seattle knew the name, at least in whispers. the Black Harbor Council. They weren't the cliché Italians from the movies. They were local, rumored to have roots running deeper than the city itself, controlling the docks and the unions long before the first tech giant built its campus. Now, they were supposedly legitimizing. They owned waste management, construction, and crucially, shipping. They were Viridian Atlas's competition. I wasn't a damsel in distress. I was a strategic asset. I was a piece on a chessboard I didn't even know existed. I had information that one monster could use against another. My hand went to my throat. This Ronan Calder. His file on me must have been thorough. He'd see that I was stubborn. He'd see I had few friends. No partner, no deep roots, just a mother. My mother down in El Paso. My stomach twisted. The money I sent her every month, the weekly phone calls. They would see her. Viridian would see her. A weakness, a point of leverage. Or maybe Calder saw it, too. Was she my weakness? Or the reason I was so uncompromising? He probably saw both. I was staring at my hands, clenching and unclenching them. When the front door of the apartment opened, I didn't hear a key in the lock, just the faint snick of a high-end mechanism and the shift of air in the room. He wasn't what I'd expected. He wasn't a brute in a tracksuit or an old man in a pinstripe. He was in his late 30s, dressed in dark jeans and a simple, well-fitting black Henley. He moved with an absolute predatory stillness. He looked more like a former Special Forces operator than a crime boss. He stopped just inside the doorway, giving me the entire length of the room. It was a clear, tactical gesture of non-aggression, or maybe it was just confidence. His eyes were the most arresting thing about him. They were dark, assessing, and utterly calm. He wasn't looking at me like a person. He was looking at me like an equation he was solving. And there was a scar, a thin, silvery white line that cut from his left cheekbone down to the edge of his jaw. It wasn't angry, just old. Miss Salgado. His voice was the one from the car, low, measured, with a gravelly texture, like rocks shifting under water. I forced myself to stand tall, to not cross my arms. You're Ronan Calder. I am. He didn't move. Are you injured? No. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. What is this? What do you want? What I want, he said, is for Viridian Atlas to stop trafficking people through my port. My port. He said it so simply. Not the port. My port. And I can't do that, he continued, if their primary witness is found floating in the Duwamish River. I'm not a witness, I shot back, the words sharp. I'm an interpreter. I am neutral. I am not involved. A flicker of something amusement maybe passed through his eyes. You became involved when you refused their bribe. You became involved when their compliance team broke down your door. Northland Compliance Group, that's who's hunting you. They don't make mistakes, and they don't leave loose ends. He knew. He knew about the bribe, the lock, the name of the shadow company. He knew everything. He took one step into the room. I read about your father, the conviction in Arizona. A cold, white-hot rage flared in my chest. You have no right to look into my family. You have no right to anything. I have the right to know who I'm protecting, he said, his voice unyielding. You value accuracy. You believe the truth matters. So do I. Viridian Atlas and Northland built an empire on lies, on bad data, on manipulating the truth and silencing anyone who corrects them. He was good, and he was twisting it, framing this as a shared crusade, and he was using my own life, my own pain, as a recruitment tool. I don't work for criminals, I said, my hands balling into fists. I won't lie for you. I won't change a single word. I know. He met my gaze, and for a half second, the calculation in his eyes was replaced by something else. Respect. I will never ask you to lie, Miss Salgado. I won't ask you to be anything other than what you are. Your precision, your refusal to bend, that is the one weapon they can't counter. He paused, the silence stretching out, filled only by the distant sound of city traffic. But in return, you stay here. You do not leave. You do not use your old phone, your email. You do not contact your mother. Northland is hunting you. They are thorough. Here, you are safe. Out there." He nodded toward the window. "You are a ghost inside of an hour." It wasn't a request. It was a statement of terms. A deal. I looked at this man, Ronan Calder. He was a criminal. He was, by definition, one of the bad guys. But my father was railroaded by a system that was supposed to be good. He was destroyed by a lie told by a neutral interpreter. I hated this man. I hated being in his debt, in his sterile glass cage. But I knew, with an awful, sinking certainty, that he was the only person in this city who was telling me the truth. "Okay," I said. My voice was small, but it didn't shake. "I stay. What happens now?" Ronan Calder finally moved, walking past me to look out the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "Now," he said, his voice a low rumble, "we use your truth to burn them to the ground." The glass tower was a cage, but it was a well-appointed one. For 2 days, I did nothing but exist. I ate food that appeared in the high-tech refrigerator. I showered with expensive, scentless soap. I stared at the water. I was safe, and I was climbing the walls. On the 3rd day, Ronan Calder returned. He didn't knock. He simply let himself in, carrying a hardened plastic briefcase. He placed it on the steel dining table. "I have a problem, Miss Salgado," he said, skipping the pleasantries, "and I think you're the solution." He opened the case. It was a laptop, matte black and military grade. He turned it on and spun it around to face me. "Moru just hit a snag," he said. "Moru, Metropolitan Organized Response Unit, a multi-agency task force, very funded, very quiet. They've been running parallel to us on Viridian Atlas, focused on their data laundering. Yesterday, they found this." He clicked a file. A video opened. It was a man, sitting in a sterile interrogation room, signing fluently in ASL. I recognized him. He was a dock worker, a witness in another case against Viridian, one that had been dismissed last month. "This is Miguel Osorio," I said, leaning closer. "He testified his safety credentials were faked. The case was thrown out." "He testified via video link," Ronan said. "This video," then he vanished. Moru believed Viridian had coerced him into changing his story, but Osorio never showed up. This video was his testimony. I watched the man signing, and he looked calm, almost placid. His hands moved clearly. He signed that he had made a mistake, that the safety checks were valid, that he had been under personal stress. He was retracting everything. "It's clean," I said, confused. "His signing is perfect." "It's too perfect," Ronan said. "Moru ran the file. It's a deep fake." I stared at him. A deep fake. Of ASL, the processing power. The nuance. That's not possible. "Viridian is run by data miners, not shipping magnates," Ronan said. "This is what Northland Compliance does. They don't just silence witnesses. Miss Salgado, they replace them. They are building a library of fake testimony to scrub their entire operation clean." He opened another file, and another. 6 videos, 6 different witnesses, all signing, all recanting testimony. "Moru is stumped," Ronan said, his dark eyes fixed on me. "Their analysts can't find the flaw. The tech is seamless, but they are analysts. You are a native speaker. You don't just see the signs. You see the language. Watch again. Find the seam." I pulled the laptop closer. I played the first video, then the second. I put them side by side. I watched Osorio's hands, his face, his posture. He was signing, but he was dead. The eyes were flat, the movements well correct, had no weight. I played Osorio's clip again and again, 10 times, 20 times. I muted the sound. I watched the pixels. And then I saw it. It was tiny, a micro movement. "There," I whispered, pointing at the screen. His left hand. In ASL, when you make a strong negative assertion, a not true or a cannot, there's a specific subtle tension. The index finger extends, yes, but the thumb often tightens instinctively against the palm. It's a human nuance, an accent. "Look at his thumb," I said, my heart starting to race. The AI learned the sign, but it didn't learn the intent. It smooths the movement, it perfects it, it removes the human tension. This man, this thing, it isn't signing not true. It's just moving its hand in the shape of the words. I quickly checked the other 5 videos. It was there in every single one. A tell, a digital fingerprint. The AI was too good. It had erased the human flaws that are, themselves, part of the language. Ronan stared at the screen, then at me. A slow, dangerous smile touched the corners of his mouth. A flaw in the code. You found it. It's a flaw in their understanding, I said. They think it's just shapes. You've just given us our weapon. He closed the laptop. My tech team, my signal shop, can use this. If we know what the AI gets wrong, we can trace the data it was fed. We can find the server. He was already on his new burner phone, speaking in a language I didn't understand. Not Spanish or Italian, but a series of codes. We're baiting the hook. Use the microdynamic flaw. No, trace the source data. I want beacons in every fake contract we have. Flood their network. I want to know where the server lives by tonight. He hung up and looked at me. They're housed in the Halcyon Pier building, top 2 floors. That's one of the most secure buildings in the city. Yes, he said. We need to see the exits, the vulnerabilities. We're going on a field check. Get a coat. 20 minutes later, I was in his car, my pulse drumming. We were going out. We parked in a public garage across from the glittering glass spike of Halcyon Pier. We're going to the roof of this garage, he said. It has the best sightlines of their delivery bays. He led me to the elevator bank. It was one of those modern, glass-walled elevators, open to the atrium of the garage. As the doors slid open, I froze. The open space, the smell of concrete and exhaust, the feeling of being exposed, of rising in a glass box, a perfect target. My breath caught. My hands began to tremble. The same tremor from that first night. I couldn't move. I couldn't step in. The panic was a cold, solid thing in my throat. Ronan stopped. He had already pressed the button. He looked at me. I saw him register my pallor, my shaking hands. He didn't speak. He didn't sigh. He didn't say, "It's fine," or "Are you okay?" He just moved. He stepped back out of the elevator, positioning himself between me and the open atrium. He stood slightly in front of me, his body shielding mine from the exposed side. It was a solid, warm wall of dark clothing. He didn't touch me. He didn't look at me. He just stared forward, his presence absolute. I could smell the clean, sharp scent of his soap and the faint, metallic tang of the city air on his jacket. His chest rose and fell in a slow, steady rhythm. Inhale, exhale. I anchored on it. I matched his breathing. Inhale, exhale. My heart slowed from a terrified sprint to a pounding run. The elevator doors started to close. "Noor," he said, his voice quiet. He didn't look down. He just held out his hand, palm up, for the elevator doors. I took a breath, and I stepped in. He stood in front of me the entire ride up, a silent, unmoving shield. The moment passed. We spent an hour on the roof, the wind whipping at us. As he mapped sightlines and ventilation shafts, speaking quietly into his phone, I just tried to feel normal again. We ate dinner in the car, parked in a dark, industrial lot overlooking the water. It was almost 10 o'clock. Dinner was a loaf of hot, crusty bread from a bakery he knew, wrapped in white paper, and 2 cups of weak, lukewarm coffee from a thermos. The quiet in the car was thick. "My father," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. Ronan turned his head, his expression unreadable in the dim dashboard light. He just waited. The interpreter in his case, the one who got it wrong, she was paid off. I tore a piece of bread, my fingers suddenly clumsy. It wasn't a big, dramatic lie. It was small. She just changed one sign, the sign for when instead of if. It changed his entire alibi. It made a hypothetical conversation sound like a concrete plan. I stared out at the dark water. He got 5 years. When he got out, my mother had already left. He was broken. all for one word, all because someone paid to change one small truth. I could feel the burn of tears behind my eyes, and I hated myself for it. I would not cry in front of this man. Ronan said nothing. He didn't offer condolences. He didn't say the system was corrupt. He just sat there, listening, giving my words space to exist in the dark. He leaned over, his shoulder brushing mine. He opened the glove compartment. He took out a small stack of new, folded paper napkins and placed them on the center console. A practical, silent offer. It undid me more than any words could have. Later, back in the glass cage, he showed me his laptop again. Northland is trying a different approach, he said. He'd been monitoring the dark web, the forums where people like me, disgruntled, skilled, compromised, might look for a way out. They had left a message. To the court interpreter, "We know your situation. Viridian plays rough. We don't agree with their methods. We can offer you a new life." Below it, a list, a full scholarship to any university in the world, a 6-figure transfer to an offshore account, and a guarantee of expedited legal immigration status for my mother, citing her as a dependent. They knew about El Paso. They knew my weakest point. At the bottom of the message were coordinates for a public park. Tomorrow, noon. Come alone. We will protect you. It was a lie. It was a trap. But it was a beautiful, tempting one. I read the words, and my blood ran cold. The scholarship. My mother, safe. Everything I wanted. I looked up at Ronan. His face was granite. He wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at me. He was waiting. He wasn't going to stop me. He wasn't going to tell me it was a trap. He was giving me the choice. He was testing me. He was testing whether I was a weapon or a liability. I stood up. I walked away from the laptop, my legs feeling unsteady. I went to the glass dining table, the one that reflected the city lights like a dark mirror. I looked at my own reflection. Then I placed my hand palm down on the cool, hard glass. I tapped my fingers, not going. I looked at his reflection. He nodded. Once. The test was over. The tension drained from the room. I felt a sudden, strange lightness. I turned to face him. He was watching my hands. I lifted them, my movements slow. I touched my chin and moved my hand forward, the sign for thank you. "What is that?" he asked, his voice low. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I signed it again. He watched my hand, then awkwardly. He copied the motion. His hands were large, his fingers blunt. It was clumsy, but the intent was there. "Like this," I said. I moved closer, correcting the angle of his hand. His skin was warm. He learned fast. His eyes never left my hands or my face. I taught him safe. I taught him wait. He held my gaze at the end of the last sign, his eyes tracking the movement, but his focus shifting to mine. He held it just a second, maybe 2 seconds, longer than necessary. My stomach tightened. Later that night, I stood on the balcony alone. The rain had passed, but the air was thick with the scent of it. It smelled like damp wood from the railing and clean, cold ozone. I was terrified. I was a prisoner. I was allied with a man who was likely a murderer. But as I stood there, breathing in the wet air, I realized that for the first time in a week, my hands were perfectly, completely still. The white delivery van, emblazoned with the cheerful blue logo of seafront linen, smelled of industrial soap and mildew. My uniform, a stiff, gray polyester button-down, itched at my neck. The ID card clipped to my pocket felt heavy, the plastic laminate biting into my shirt. Nor Sallow, it read, Auditory Compliance Technician. It was a lie, just like the van, just like the man sitting next to me. Ronan, dressed in an identical gray uniform, navigated the midday Seattle traffic with a frustrating, practiced calm. He looked like any other driver on a long shift, his baseball cap pulled low, his eyes scanning the mirrors. We didn't pull up to the shimmering front entrance of the Halcyon Pier Tower. We went to the back, to the cavernous, echoing loading bay, a concrete canyon filled with the roar of diesel engines and the shouting of men. He backed the van perfectly into slot 3, killed the engine, and nodded to the manifest on his clipboard. "Stay half a step behind me. Look at the ground. You're the assistant. You're nervous." He wasn't wrong about the nervous part. We wheeled a tall, canvas cart loaded with what looked like cleaning supplies toward the freight elevator. A bored guard checked our paperwork, his eyes barely registering us. 41st floor, server maintenance, Ronan said, his voice flat. The guard grunted and buzzed us through. The elevator ride was slow, a grinding ascent. The air grew colder, thinner. Ronan stood by the control panel, perfectly still, his presence filling the small metal box. I focused on my task. My device was in my pocket, disguised as a multi-socket power strip. It was my own design, a visual sensor I'd conceptualized, built by his team. It was programmed to ignore the data itself, but to watch the way the data was formed, searching for the tiny, human, non-mathematical tremor that the deep-fake AI had smoothed over. It was a lie detector for a language made of movement. The doors opened onto a hallway so white and sterile it hurt my eyes. The only sound was the high, thin hum of ventilation. Ronan pushed the cart, its wheels squeaking, and stopped at a specific junction. "Hall camera, 90-second loop," he murmured. He angled the tall cart to create a blind spot. "The server room is 30 feet down. On your left, you have 1 minute." I moved. My sneakers made no sound on the polished floor. The door was marked Mainframe C. The key card he'd given me slid in. A green light. I was in. The room was a cathedral of noise, a deafening, freezing hum. Rows upon rows of black server towers stood silent, their tiny blue and green lights blinking in complex rhythms. I located the central rack his team had marked on a schematic. I knelt, my hands shaking. Not from fear, but from the cold and the adrenaline. I pulled out my device, plugged it into the wall socket, and then plugged the main server rack into my device. A small amber light on my power strip began to blink. It was online. It was harvesting. Intrusion detected. The voice came from everywhere. It was female, calm, and utterly inhuman. Unauthorized hardware addition, sub-basement level C, initiating lockdown. The hallway door I just entered slammed shut with a heavy, magnetic thud. The white lights died, replaced by sweeping, pulsing red emergency strobes. I ran. Ronan was already at the door, yanking on the handle. It was solid metal. "This way now," he yelled, his voice sharp over the alarm. He hit the emergency bar on a fire door I hadn't even seen. We were in a concrete stairwell. The alarm was deafening, echoing off the walls. "Down go," he shouted, his hand on my back, propelling me forward. We ran, our footsteps a chaotic clatter. 40, 39, 38. Then I heard it. Not the alarm, a new sound, a high-pitched, electric whine, like 1,000 angry hornets. It was coming from above. I looked up. A sleek black machine, maybe the size of a dinner plate, descended from a vent. It had 4 rotors and a single glowing red eye. A drone. Then another one appeared, and another. "They're not security drones," Ronan yelled, pulling me down another flight of stairs. "They're Northland." A sharp crack exploded next to my ear. I screamed, flinching as something zipped past my head and embedded in the concrete wall. It wasn't a bullet, it was a net, made of fine, glowing blue wire. It sizzled, sending sparks where it hit the railing. "Taser nets," Ronan shouted. "Don't let them touch you, move." We half ran, half fell down the flights. The drones were fast, their movements precise and terrifying. A net snagged the back of Ronan's shirt. He ripped the fabric free without breaking stride, the smell of ozone and burnt cloth filling the air. We burst through the door marked P7, the parking garage, a massive descending spiral of concrete. "Cars on P2, he said, breathing hard. "They'll have the exits covered. We have to be fast." He grabbed my hand, "Match my steps." He took off, and he didn't sprint. He ran in a steady, powerful rhythm, and I fell in beside him. Left, right, Our feet hit the oil-stained ground in perfect synchronized time. It was the only way I could keep up. I saw a security camera, a black dome on the ceiling, swivel toward us. Ronan didn't even look at it. He spoke into his wrist. "Nix. Blind them." The camera's red indicator light blinked, turned green, and then went dark. A digital flare, and as he called it, his team was our invisible shield. We reached P2. The black sedan was parked in a dark corner. We threw ourselves in. The engine turned over with a quiet, powerful hum. Ronan spun the car around, tires squealing, and sped toward the descending ramp. As we rounded the curve, they were there, 6 of them, hovering in a perfect V formation, blocking the ramp. Their red eyes glowed in the darkness. Ronan growled, a low sound in his chest. He steered the car straight at them. He was going to ram them. But 2 more drones shot out from the side, firing their nets. One hit the windshield, the blue energy crackling, blinding us. Ronan hit the wipers, which just smeared the electrified net across the glass. The car began to skid on the slick concrete. He was fighting the wheel, his muscles corded in his arms, the car sliding sideways toward the pillar. We were going to crash. I didn't think. I acted, my training, my instincts. They are all about connection, about communication. I reached across the console. My hand was shaking, but I made it firm. I placed my palm flat against the back of his neck, my fingers spreading into his short hair. His skin was hot. He flinched, a violent, involuntary tensing of every muscle in his body. He wasn't used to being touched. But I held on. My hand was steady. I didn't say a word. I just anchored him. I am here. Concentrate. Drive. It was like a switch had been flipped. The tension didn't leave his body. It focused. He stopped fighting the skid and slammed his foot on the brake. Then the accelerator, wrenching the wheel into the spin. The car snapped back. The net flew off the windshield, and we shot forward, breaking through the drone blockade. We heard the satisfying crunch of metal and plastic as we crushed 2 of them under our tires. He didn't take the main exit. He swerved down a no-entry ramp, a service exit that led to a narrow, dark alley. We burst out onto the waterfront, the tires spitting gravel. We were heading straight for the Denny Canal. A concrete barrier at the end of the pier loomed. "Hold on," he yelled. He slammed the brakes. The car stopped, inches from the barrier, so hard my teeth rattled. Behind us, the remaining drones swarmed out of the garage. They zeroed in on us, and then, one by one, they just stopped. They froze in midair, their lights flickered, and they dropped from the sky like stones. "Jamming signal," Ronan said, his voice a low gasp. He was already out of the car, pulling my door open. "Let's go." A low-profile motorboat was idling in the dark water below the pier. A figure in dark clothes was at the helm. "Jump," Ronan commanded. We jumped, landing hard on the boat's deck. The engine roared before I was even on my feet, and we were suddenly moving, speeding away, diving under the heavy, dark shadow of a bridge. The cold spray of the canal hit my face. I was soaked. I was shaking. I was alive. I leaned back against the cold fiberglass, my lungs aching, and I started to laugh. It wasn't a giggle. It was a raw, breathless, hysterical sound that I couldn't stop. It was the sound of a spring that had been wound too tight and had finally snapped. I looked at Ronan, and he was leaning against the console, his chest heaving, his dark hair matted to his forehead. He watched me, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Then, for the first time, I saw it. A real smile. It was small, rare, and gone in an instant, but it lit his eyes. His gaze dropped to my arm. The smile vanished. "You're hurt." I looked down. The sleeve of my gray shirt was torn. A long, dark gash ran down my forearm, a gift from the concrete pillar. Blood was welling, black in the darkness. I hadn't even felt it. He moved, kneeling in front of me in the unsteady boat. He pulled a dark blue bandana from his back pocket. It was clean, folded. He took my arm. His hands, which I knew were hard and calloused, were impossibly gentle. He didn't speak. He just meticulously folded the cloth into a pad, pressed it against the cut, and wrapped the ends firmly, tying a knot that was both tight and precise. The bandana was cool from the night air, but his fingers were warm. The contrast, the simple, practical intimacy of the act, bound my chaotic fear into something else, something solid. I looked at him, my laughter finally gone, my breath still catching. I lifted my good hand, my fingers still clumsy with adrenaline. I touched my chin and extended my hand forward. "Thank you." He watched the sign, he processed it, then, slowly, he lifted his own hand and mirrored the motion. It was awkward, stiff, but the meaning was clear. His eyes met mine, and he formed the sign again, this time with a deliberate, sharp finality, always. The boat ride across the Sound was silent and cold. The adrenaline from the chase had evaporated, leaving behind a deep, aching exhaustion and the steady throb of my forearm. Ronan's bandana was a dark, tight line against my skin. He steered us not toward the city, but away from it, toward the black mass of Bainbridge Island. We slipped into a private cove, a dock hidden by darkness and old-growth pines. The house was not a glass tower. It was the opposite. Built low to the ground, it was all dark redwood and stone, with massive plate glass windows that faced the churning, black water. The only sound was the wind in the trees and the rhythmic crash of waves on the shore. It felt ancient and solid. Inside, a single yellow lamp was burning. The air smelled of cedar and the faint, clean ash of a fireplace that had long gone cold. "This is one of the first properties my family acquired," Ronan said, his voice quiet in the wooden-beamed room. "No one has been here in a decade. It's clean." He disappeared for a moment and came back with a heavy wool blanket, which he draped over my shoulders, and a comprehensive first aid kit. He sat me down on a worn leather sofa near the great window. "The cut needs to be cleaned," he said. I nodded, numb. I watched as he knelt in front of me. He unwrapped his bandana, his movements economical and precise. He cleaned the gash with an antiseptic wipe. I flinched, the sting sharp and sudden, and his hands paused. "Sorry," he murmured. He was so close I could see the fatigue in his own eyes, the lines of tension around his mouth. He finished cleaning it, applied a butterfly bandage to pull the skin together, and then wrapped it in a clean, white gauze. His touch was firm, impersonal, and yet it was the only gentle thing I had felt in days. When he was done, he didn't stand up immediately. He just knelt there, looking at my arm, at the clean bandage. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded, his eyes lifting to mine. I was suddenly intensely aware of our proximity. The chaotic energy of the chase was gone, replaced by this tomb-like quiet. It was just us, a man I barely knew, a man who was, by all definitions, a criminal. And he was the only reason I was alive. My mind raced. For the first time, I felt a deep, profound anxiety that had nothing to do with Northland. I had spent my entire life trusting only myself, my hands, my mind, my truth. It was a fortress I had built after my father's conviction. Trust was a liability. Trust was the open door that let the liars in. Now, this man was inside my fortress. He hadn't broken in. I had let him in. I had put my hand on his neck. I had trusted him to drive. Ronan must have seen the conflict in my face. He stood up, breaking the tension, and moved away. He put physical space between us, a deliberate, respectful distance. He went into the small, dark kitchen. I heard the scrape of a kettle on a stove, the click of the gas burner. He was giving me room to breathe. He was letting me choose. He returned with 2 heavy ceramic mugs. Steam rose from them, smelling sharply of peppermint. He set one on the low wooden table in front of me, and then sat in a separate armchair across the room, near the cold fireplace. He held his own mug in both hands, as if to warm them. He didn't speak. He just waited, watching the dark water outside. The silence was a question. I was safe from the drones, but was I safe from him? I looked at him. He wasn't a monster. He was a man of contradictions, brutal in his efficiency, yet gentle when he'd bandaged my arm. He was a man who lived in a world of shadows, yet he was obsessed with my truth. My eyes kept drifting to his face, to the one flaw in his mask of control, the scar, the thin white line that cut across his left cheek. I thought about the pain that must have created it. I stood up. My legs felt unsteady. I walked across the space between us. He watched me, his body perfectly still, his eyes alert. He didn't invite me closer, but he didn't lean away. I stopped in front of his chair, and he had to look up at me. I lifted my hand, the one that wasn't bandaged. I didn't tremble. I was making a choice. I slowly, deliberately, reached out and traced the line of his scar with the tip of my index finger. His skin was rough, warm. He didn't flinch. He didn't breathe. He just closed his eyes at my touch. My fingers lingered on his cheekbone. My eyes asked the question I couldn't voice. He opened his eyes. He understood. He gave a single, slow nod. "If you want to, nor," he whispered. His voice was raw. It was all the permission I needed. I leaned down. The kiss was not what I expected. There was no fire, no sudden passion. It was light, hesitant, like steam fogging a cold window. It was a question. His lips were chapped, tasting faintly of the night air and the salt from the canal. It was a touch, nothing more. I pulled back a fraction of an inch, just enough to see his eyes. They were dark, searching mine, and he was checking. "Okay." I gave the smallest nod. "Okay." The second kiss was different. He met me halfway. It was no longer a question, but an answer. It was steady, solid. It was a discovery. His hand, which had been wrapped around his mug, came up. He didn't grab me. He placed it gently on my shoulder, his thumb rubbing the fabric of my damp shirt. My own hand moved from his scar to the side of his neck. I breathed, and he breathed with me. Our rhythm, which we'd found in the garage while running for our lives. We found it again, here, in the stillness. My shoulders, which had been rigid with tension for a week, finally relaxed. His jacket fell from my shoulders, pooling on the floor. The world narrowed to the sound of the rain on the roof and the warm, yellow light from the single lamp. He stood, pulling me with him. We didn't break the kiss, not really. It became a series of soft, careful touches. My forehead rested against his. His other hand found my back, not pulling me closer, just holding me, grounding me. This wasn't about sex. It was about survival. It was about two people who lived in a world of lies finding one solid thing to hold on to. It was about finding a safe harbor in the storm. Sometime later, the night closed in. We ended up on the sofa, the one where he had bandaged my arm. I was wrapped in the wool blanket, my head resting on his chest. I could hear the slow, steady beat of his heart under my ear. It was the most calming sound I had ever heard. His hand was linked with mine, our fingers interlaced. "I don't force," he murmured into my hair, "and I don't hide." A promise. No forcing, no hiding. It was a better vow than any I could imagine. I fell asleep to the sound of his breathing and the rain. I woke to the smell of wet wood and mint. I was still on the sofa, covered in the blanket. The gray morning light filled the room. Ronan was gone. I sat up, my body sore, but my mind clear. I found him on the wide redwood deck overlooking the water. The rain had stopped, leaving a heavy mist hanging over the sound. He was shoeless, dressed in dark sweatpants and a t-shirt. Despite the cold, he was moving. It wasn't exercise. Not really. It was a series of slow, controlled forms, like martial arts slowed down to the speed of breathing. His movements were fluid, disciplined, his hands cutting through the damp air. I leaned against the doorframe, watching. He was focused, his brow furrowed in concentration. I found myself matching my breathing to his movements. Inhale as he lifted his arms, exhale as he pushed his palms forward. He finished, holding his hands at his center, and stood still for a long moment before opening his eyes. He saw me and didn't look surprised. Peppermint tea, I said, my voice hoarse. He smiled, that rare, small smile. I'll make it. As he walked past me, the clean burner phone he'd given me buzzed on the kitchen counter. A new message. My stomach dropped. It was always bad news. He stopped, watching me. I picked up the phone. It was an anonymous link to a video file. I tapped it. My blood turned to ice. It was me. I was sitting in a dark room, signing frantically. I recognized the man I was signing to. He was the father from a custody case 2 years prior, a deaf man I had fought for, a man who had won custody of his son. In the video, I was signing. He's not safe. Take the money. I can get your son out of the country for $50,000. I'll change the testimony. My hands, my face, I was selling out a family. I was doing the one thing I had sworn my life I would never do. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering onto the floor. My hands flew to my mouth, but no sound came out. I was shaking. A violent, uncontrollable tremor. It was real. How had they... Ronan was at my side in an instant. He didn't touch me. He picked up the phone. He watched the video. His face impassive. He watched it all the way to the end. I was hyperventilating. I would never... How... He let the video finish, then he knelt, just as he had last night, holding the phone up for me. Watch again, Noor, he said, his voice a calm, solid anchor. Watch your left hand, the sign for money. He replayed that section. I watched, my vision blurred by panic. The AI, he said, it's perfect, too perfect. Look at your thumb. I stared, and I saw it. The AI version of me, when signing money, kept the thumb rigid, but I have a habit, a human, sloppy habit. I curl my thumb. It was the same flaw I had found in their other deepfakes. He wasn't telling me it was fake. He was proving it to me, using my own expertise. He was giving me back my own truth. The air rushed back into my lungs. I sagged against the doorframe, weak with relief. Ronan stood, his expression hardening. They're smart, he said. They failed to bribe you, they failed to scare you, and they failed to catch you. So they're trying to break me, I whispered, staring at the phone. He nodded. They're trying to make you doubt the one thing you have your own integrity. They will use anything against us. Your mother, my past. He paused, his eyes meeting mine. This. He gestured to the room, to the unmade blanket on the sofa, to the space between us that was no longer neutral. I straightened up, my fear turning to a cold, hard anger. This doesn't slow the plan, I said. No, he agreed. It means we have to be cleaner, faster. It means we have to be absolutely certain, because they will use every attachment we have to tear us apart. I looked at his hand, the one that had held mine all night, an attachment, a new, dangerous, and powerful attachment. Okay, I said, meeting his gaze. What's next? The safe house on Bainbridge Sound was no longer a refuge. It became a command center. The fear and uncertainty that had defined our first days were gone, replaced by a cold, shared focus. What had happened between us in the dark, that hesitant, desperate reach for connection had settled into a solid, unspoken foundation. We were no longer two strangers. We were an attachment, and as Ronan had said, our enemies would use it. We had to be cleaner, faster. We had to be smarter. My people are good, Ronan said, standing over a map of the port spread across the redwood dining table. They can spot a tail, a weapon, a fake ID, but they can't spot what your people see. They can't see the lie. My people, I asked? Interpreters. People who live in the nuance. Viridian's whole operation is built on exploiting those who can't speak the language. Labor trafficking. They bring them in, promise them the world, and trap them with contracts they can't read and threats they can't report. So, I teach them, I said, the idea forming as I spoke. I teach your team to see the signals. He called them his harbor hands. They weren't soldiers. They were longshoremen, union reps, construction foremen, and volunteers from his community programs, people who were already on the ground for a week. I ran a quiet training seminar in the back room of a dockside diner. I taught them to spot the ASL of exploitation, the averted gaze of a worker when their manager spoke, the involuntary flinch when a new shipping container was opened, the way two men from the same country would stand apart, afraid to be seen talking. I taught them to see the difference between a person who was tired and a person who was terrified. I was weaponizing my expertise, turning my hands from a tool of translation into a tool of espionage. While I built a human network, Ronan built a digital one. The device I'd planted in Halcyon Pier had done its job before the drones attacked. It had confirmed the deepfake AI's location and, more importantly, its appetite. "It's a data eater," Ronan explained, showing me a complex diagram on his laptop. "It's constantly scanning for new material to learn from. Northland is proud of it. They think it's their silver bullet." "So, we feed it," I said, catching his logic. "We feed it a Trojan horse. My team is loading 3 ghost shipping containers. They're not filled with goods, they're filled with servers. These servers are loaded with high-definition, fake video files, thousands of hours of them, all designed to appeal to the AI." "More deepfake bait," I murmured. "Exactly. But these files are tagged with beacons. The moment Northland's AI accesses them, the moment they try to eat our data, the beacons will activate. It won't just tell us where their central server is. It will map their entire internal network, every computer, every phone, every remote user. We'll give them a stomachache that poisons their whole system." The plan was brilliant, but it needed a trigger. We needed Northland to want to move the AI's core data, to back it up, to connect it to our ghost containers. We needed to make them think their Halcyon Pier location was compromised. The opportunity came in an unexpected form, a high-level corporate mediation. Viridian Atlas was in a private dispute with another logistics firm. It was a setup, a way to quietly pass data and strategy. Ronan's sources told him 2 of Northland's top managers would be there, along with their legal team. "I can't get a mic in that room," Ronan said, his jaw tight. "It's swept, shielded, but they can't sweep for eyes." "You want me to go in?" I said. It wasn't a question. As a linguistic consultant for the other firm, they're cooperative. You'll be there to analyze body language, advise on trust signals. It was absurdly corporate and perfectly invisible. I sat in the corner of a 40th floor boardroom, dressed in an expensive, borrowed suit, taking notes. For 3 hours, I watched lawyers argue, then I saw it. The lead Northland manager, a man with cold, polished features, was listening to the opposing counsel. Under the table, his left hand, resting on his knee, was moving. It wasn't a fidget, it was a sign, a tap of the index finger, a brush of the thumb. Coded, his lawyer, 2 seats down, glanced at him. The lawyer's hand, holding a pen, tapped twice in response. I watched them all afternoon. It was their own internal shorthand. I logged every twitch, every tap. By the time we left, I had a dozen words. Back at the safe house, I laid it out for Ronan. This one, the finger slide. He used it every time they mentioned financials. This one, the thumb press, was for scheduling. And this was the most complex. I showed him the sequence: a double tap on the thigh, followed by a slight outward rotation of the wrist. He did it when the lawyer mentioned contingency assets, I said, and again when they mentioned Rainview Terminal. Ronan went still. Rainview. It's a low-security cargo terminal. They're moving their data. They're moving the AI. That's the rendezvous. The plan solidified. Ronan would set the ghost containers at Rainview. We'd leak a rumor that Moru was planning a full forensic sweep of Halcyon Pier. Northland would panic, move their server core, and plug it right into our trap. But there was a problem. Rainview isn't just a Northland terminal, Ronan said, pointing to the map. We run a legitimate refrigerated line out of there. Produce. 250 jobs to make the switch, to get our ghost containers into their slot. I have to shut that line down for 48 hours, right before a major shipment. I stared at him. Shut it down, 250 people. That's their paycheck, their rent. You can't just sacrifice them. It's collateral, he said, his voice flat. It's the cost of the operation. Nor, this is the part of the war you haven't seen. We take the hit. We cut them off. The line is back up in 2 days. It's clean. It's not clean, I shot back, my voice rising. It's not collateral to the man who can't feed his family next week. It's the same thing my father went through. The system deciding his life was an acceptable loss. This is not that, he said, his voice dangerously low. This is a choice. Their jobs, or the freedom of the hundreds of people Viridian is trafficking. I am choosing the greater good. You don't get to make that choice. I was standing now, my hands clenched. There has to be another way. You can't be the monster to stop the monster. We were yelling. It was the first time. The air in the room was electric, vibrating with our anger. He was the cold pragmatist. I was the bleeding idealist, and we were deadlocked. He stared at me for a long, hard minute. I could see the calculation in his eyes, the weighing of options. He was the boss. He could overrule me. He didn't. He let out a long breath, scrubbing a hand over his face. Okay, he said, the anger gone, replaced by a weary resolve. Okay, we don't sacrifice them. He went to his laptop and made a call. It's me. Activate the Calder Relief Fund. I need payroll covered for the entire Rainview Cold Line. 258 employees, full pay, plus a 10% bonus for the maintenance shutdown. Yes, all of them. And I want it in their accounts before the shift is canceled. He hung up and looked at me. The line goes down, but my people are made whole. Is that clean enough for you? I just nodded, my throat tight. He hadn't just compromised. He had shown me a different kind of power, not the power to destroy, but the power to protect. Before we could launch the plan, the call came. One of the young witnesses from the dockworker trainings, a deaf teenager named Leo, had vanished. He'd been seen forced into a black van. Northland had him. Moru, the government task force, found out. They called Ronan, and he put them on speaker. This is our chance. The agent's voice was tinny. They took the kid to bait her. They want the interpreter. Let us wire her. Put her on the street. We can grab the whole team when they make the pickup. Use me as bait. My blood ran cold. No, Ronan said. His voice was absolute. There was no room for argument. Calder, this is the smart play. I don't protect my assets just to feed them to the wolves. You want her testimony? You'll get it, but you'll get it my way. He hung up, cutting off the agent's protest. They'll try to silence Leo, I whispered, the horror sinking in. Or use him, Ronan said. Another deep fake, another recanted testimony. No, I said, an idea sparking. We fight them with the truth, with our network. I went to the laptop. Leo is part of the city's deaf community. It's a network faster than any internet. We need a signal, a help me sign they can't fake and can't suppress. I filmed a short 30-second video of my own hands. I designed a new sign, a simple, non-ASL gesture, a closed fist, held to the chest, then opening flat, fingers spread, trapped, need help, see me. Get this to every deaf community leader, every social media group, every church in the city. I told Ronan's tech team, tell them if you see Leo or any worker, make this sign, film it, post it, tag the police, tag the news, tag Viridian. Within hours, it was everywhere. It was a silent, digital scream. Hands making the sign appeared in windows, on buses, from the crowds at Pike Place Market. It was a storm of silent witnesses, a tide of hands rising up. Ronan watched the feed, a look of profound respect on his face. You've just built an army, he murmured. Now, we give them a voice, he said. He pointed to the schematics for his mobile van. Moru wants her testimony. We'll give it to them. We'll give it to the whole city. We're going to live stream. The mobile interpreting room was a reinforced news van, its inside stripped and lined with soundproofing and signal jamming mesh. It was a digital fortress on wheels. The night of the Rainview operation, I sat inside it. A single camera was pointed at me. A laptop showed me the live feed. "You're in control. Noor," Ronan said. He was standing just outside the van, but he looked anxious. He wasn't in the driver's seat. You tell your story. You show the evidence. You're the front line. I nodded, my heart pounding a steady, strong rhythm. I was no longer a victim. I was the weapon. I watched him walk away to coordinate with his team. He sat down in a dark sedan, his command post across the lot, through the van's tinted window. I could just make him out. A silhouette in the dashboard light. He was watching my feed on his own laptop. I saw him place his hand on the armrest of his chair, his fingers gripping the cheap plastic so tightly his knuckles turned white. The light on my camera turned red. We were live. "My name is Noor Salgado," I said, my hands rising, steady and sure, into the light. "And I am an interpreter. I am here to translate the truth." The rain at Rainview Terminal was a greasy, cold mist that slicked the pavement under the harsh yellow sodium lights. The air smelled of low tide and diesel. A massive container ship, the Viridian Star, was docked, its deep engines thrumming, a low vibration I felt in my bones. 48 minutes, Ronan said. His voice was a low rumble next to me. We were in the mobile command van, the armored studio, parked deep in the shadows between two towering stacks of containers. The countdown had begun. Northland believed the ship was leaving, carrying their precious deepfake data. They were here to pull the physical server core and move it to a new, safe location, a location that was, in fact, our ghost container. I sat in the passenger seat, my laptop open. The van was a fortress, shielded from electronic eavesdropping. My screen was split into 4 live feeds from Ronan's Harbor Hands team, who were moving into position on the ground. Ronan was in the driver's seat, his own tablet mounted on the dash. He wasn't watching my feeds. He was watching a perimeter scan, a digital map showing red, pulsing dots. "Northland is active," he said, his voice flat. "2 signal sweeper trucks just past the main gate. They're hunting us. They know we're broadcasting. They just don't know from where." My team, his team, was still exposed. I had an open earpiece, but it was one way. I was not to speak. Any audio signal from this van would be a beacon for those sweepers. "Talk to me," Ronan said. He tapped his own secure mic, the one linked to his team. I turned to him, my hands rising into the dim glow of the dashboard. This was our system. My hands, which once only translated, were now directing an assault. I signed, my movements fast and economical. Team Alpha, 2 hostiles, East Quadrant. By the blue crane. Hold position. Do not engage. Ronan watched my hands, his eyes never leaving them. He translated, his own voice calm and low into his microphone. "Alpha, 2 bogies, East, blue crane. Hold position. I repeat, do not engage." My hands to his eyes to my hands, his voice to his team. A perfect, silent chain of command. On my screen, I saw the feed from Team Beta. They were at the rendezvous point, the loading dock where our ghost container waited. "We are set." The team leader signed to his button camera. I relayed it to Ronan with my hands. "Beta is in position, ready to arm the beacon." "Beta, arm the beacon," Ronan ordered. "We are green. Wait for the package." The trap was set. The red dots of the sweeper trucks on Ronan's map were getting closer, painting a tighter and tighter circle around our position. And then my burner phone buzzed. It sat on the console between us, vibrating against the plastic. It was the clean phone, the one with no ties to my old life. Except one. A single word glowed on the screen. "Mama." My heart didn't just stop. It felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. I couldn't breathe. My hands, which had been so steady, dropped to my lap. I stared at the screen. A cold, sickening dread flooding my veins. It was impossible. No one had this number. It was a lie. It was a trap. It rang again, vibrating violently. "Mama!" "Don't," Ronan said. His voice was sharp, a command. I couldn't help it. My hand was shaking, a tremor so bad I could barely control it. It was my mother, in El Paso. They had found her. The threat Northland had made, the one I had dismissed. It was real. Nor! Ronan's voice was a blade, cutting through the fog of my panic. I picked it up. My thumb hovered over the accept button. I was frozen. All the training, all the focus, all the anger, it all evaporated. My mother, they had her. Ronan's hand covered mine. He didn't grab, he didn't snatch, he just covered my hand, and the phone beneath it. His grip was firm, absolute, and impossibly warm. He wasn't just stopping me. He was holding me, grounding me. I tore my eyes away from the glowing screen and looked at him. His face was a mask of cold fury, but his eyes were locked on mine, and they were steady. "We have a safe word," he said, his voice low and intense, meant only for me. "My team is with her. If she was in danger, they would have called me with the word sandstone. They have not called." The phone continued to buzz under his palm, a frantic, desperate vibration. "Mama, mama, mama." "This is a ghost call," he said, his gaze pinning me. "They are in the network. They are pushing you. They are trying to break you. Do not let them. Look at me." I stared at him, my breath catching in my throat. He was right. Sandstone. He had a team. He had a plan. This was a digital attack, a psychological one. I pulled my hand out from under his, with a finger that was now perfectly steady. I declined the call. The van was plunged back into silence. The phone on the console went dark. I looked at Ronan. I nodded. "Once?" I lifted my hands, my anger a cold, clean fire. "I'm okay, team status." Before he could answer, a sudden, chaotic explosion of white shattered the darkness outside. 100 seagulls, roosting on the nearby pilings, erupted into the night sky, their screams echoing across the terminal. Ronan didn't even look. He was already staring at his tablet. "That's the lookout signal. They're not just sweeping, they're here. Tactical team, south entrance." His earpiece crackled, and I heard the panicked, whispered voice of his team leader. "They're on us. They have eyes. They see in the dark. Thermal." "The sweeper trucks are closing in," Ronan said, his hand already on the van's ignition. "They'll have our position in 90 seconds. "Warehouse T7, when I said, my voice sharp. He looked at me, surprised by the sudden command. I pointed to the glowing terminal map on my laptop. "It's 2 blocks over. It's a city dead zone. All the cameras on that street have been broken for over a year. It's a black hole." He didn't question me, and he didn't hesitate. He turned the key. The engine rumbled to life, and he killed the headlights. "All teams, disengage." He barked into his mic. "Fall back to T7, roof access, go, now." He threw the van into gear. We shot out from between the containers, a black ghost in the yellow light. The terminal was a maze. He took a hard right, tires squealing on the wet pavement. A black armored SUV, its lights off, slid into the intersection, blocking our path. "Hold on," Ronan growled. He didn't slow down. He wrenched the wheel, aiming for the narrow, non-existent gap between the SUV and a massive concrete barrier. We slammed through. The sound of metal screaming against metal was deafening, a shower of sparks lighting up the cabin. The van shuddered violently, but he held it. We were through. We raced down the dark access road, the skeletal frame of Warehouse T7 looming in front of us. "We have to ditch the van," he said, skidding to a stop in the alley behind the building. "They'll be on it in a minute." We were out, running through the cold night air. The side door of the warehouse was chained, but Ronan shattered the lock with a single, brutal kick. We plunged inside into a vast, cavernous darkness. The only sound was the distant, mournful call of a foghorn from the water. "The freight elevator," I said, my voice echoing in the immense space. "It's the only way to the roof." We found it, a massive, sliding metal door. Ronan hauled it open, and we stepped inside the pitch-black metal box. He slammed the gate shut, and the world disappeared. We were in total darkness. I heard him fumbling, then the click of a metal button. A single, bright beam of light cut the black, a flashlight. He didn't keep it. He pressed it into my hand. "You memorized the schematics," he said, his voice a low rumble in the dark. "I'm just muscle. You lead the way." My fingers closed around the warm metal. It was giving me control. In his world, in the dark. He was trusting me to be the eyes. I heard the grinding of gears as the elevator began its slow, rattling ascent. It was terrifying, trapped in the dark, rising toward an unknown threat. The elevator shuddered, groaned, and stopped. We were there. I aimed the light at the sliding gate. This was it. The door would open, and we would face whatever was waiting. "Noor!" Ronan's voice came from the darkness behind me. It was close. I could feel the warmth of his breath. I turned, the beam of the flashlight illuminating his face. His eyes were intense, his jaw set. "When this is done," he whispered, "I'm taking you back to that rainy balcony, the one on the island." My breath caught. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a promise of after. I didn't have the words. I just nodded. I reached up with my free hand, my fingers finding the rough stubble of his jaw in the dark. He leaned into my touch, and his mouth found mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was hard, fast, and desperate. It tasted of adrenaline and salt and cold air. It was a seal, a code. "I will fight for you. You will fight for me." It was over in a second. I turned back to the door, my heart pounding a new rhythm, a rhythm of resolve. I raised the flashlight. With a loud metallic shriek, the elevator doors slid open. The warehouse floor was vast, empty, and lit by a dozen high-pressure sodium lamps, casting a hellish yellow glow over everything. His team was there, Alpha and Beta, 2 men, weapons low, backs against the wall. They were safe. Then, from the far end of the warehouse, I heard the sound of a heavy, powerful engine. A set of headlights flashed on, blinding us. A black, armored SUV, identical to the one that had cut us off, glided to a stop 50 yards away. The engine idled, a low, predatory growl. The passenger door opened. The head of the snake was here. The passenger door of the black SUV opened, but the man who stepped out was not a thug. He was the man from the boardroom, the one whose hands had given away the plan. He was dressed in a dark, impeccably cut suit, and he walked onto the vast warehouse floor as if he owned it. This was Gareth Lorne. His voice, amplified by a speaker, was calm and condescending. A dramatic relocation, Mr. Calder, but ultimately a futile one. He stopped in the center of the sodium-lit floor, flanked by 2 men in full tactical gear. Ronan took a half step, placing his body partially in front of mine. His 2 men, Alpha and Beta, fanned out, their hands low, their bodies tense. "And Miss Salgado," Lorne continued, his eyes finding me. "Noor, you have been a profound disappointment, all this, over a simple misunderstanding. I'm here to offer you a way out, a final one." "I'm not interested in deals with you," I said, my voice sounding small in the huge space. "Oh, this isn't a deal, my dear. This is a lifeline." He held up a slim, leather-bound folder. "We are, as you know, aware of your mother, a lovely little house in El Paso. She's fine. We'd like to keep it that way." The threat from the phone, the cold ghost call, now had a face. My stomach twisted. "Here is the offer," Lorne said, his voice resonating with false generosity. "It's an affidavit, a legal document. You will sign it, admitting that you made a significant and material error in your translation of the girl's testimony. That you were stressed, that you were confused, that you have caused irreparable harm to Viridian Atlas with your mistake. In short, you will tell the truth that you were wrong." Ronan's voice was a low growl, vibrating with contained violence. "She signs nothing." "If she signs," Lorne continued, his gaze fixed on me, "2 things happen. 1, a full legal immunity package for you and for your mother. We will, in fact, relocate her to a beautiful, secure property in Southern California. All expenses paid. 2, he shifted his gaze to Ronan. "You, Calder, will dissolve your harbor hands. You will walk away from the port. All of it. You will stick to your waste management and your construction. You will be a civilian. He tossed the leather folder. It skidded across the gritty concrete, stopping just a few yards in front of me. Sign the paper, Noor, and your mother is safe. Everyone here walks away. It's a clean ending. Ronan was about to speak, about to refuse, but I put my hand on his forearm. It was like touching granite. Wait, I said, Noor, don't, he hissed. Let me see it. I stepped out from behind him, my legs shaky. I walked into the open, yellow-lit space, my footsteps echoing. I knelt, my hands trembling, and picked up the folder. I opened it. It was exactly what he'd said. Dense, legal, brutal. Noor Salgado, do hereby admit to a gross mistranslation. But I kept reading. I read the fine print, and on page 3, I found it. The real poison? It was a small, buried clause. By signing this admission, the undersigned verifies that all related activities, specifically the Viridian Atlas Recruitment Program, formerly referred to in error as the Farm, are legitimate, bonded, and fully compliant labor initiatives. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just silencing me. He was using my signature, my credibility as a certified interpreter, to legalize his human trafficking. He was making me the final piece of his compliance puzzle. I would be the stamp of approval that made it all clean. I looked up. Lorne was smiling, a thin, knowing smile. He knew he had me. She won't sign, Ronan said, his voice flat. He had taken a step forward. I saw his hand subtly signal his men. He was done talking. He was ready to end this with violence. No. Ronan, wait. I looked at him, and a sudden, cold clarity washed over me. The feed, I said, my voice low but sharp. He froze. His eyes met mine. He understood instantly. The live stream. The mobile van was gone. But the feed, the audio and video we'd been streaming, was still live, routed through my laptop, which was now in the hands of his tech team. The camera in my earpiece, the mic on my lapel. They were still active. Let me talk, I said. I stood up, holding the papers. I turned to Gareth Lorne. You want me to sign this affidavit? It is the only choice you have, and he said, triumphant. All right, I said, but I have to read it aloud first. It's a professional standard. I never sign anything without reading it into the record. Lorne shrugged, magnanimous in his victory. As you wish. Be thorough. I took a deep breath. I held the papers up, and I began to read, my voice ringing out sharp and clear in the vast echoing warehouse. I, Noor Salgado, do hereby admit to a gross mistranslation of testimony. I read every single word, and as I read, I lifted my free hand into the view of the tiny camera still broadcasting to the world, to the deaf community I had mobilized. My hands began to move. I admit that I was confused and under extreme personal stress. My hand signed lie. This is a lie. Weighing in that my errors have caused irreparable harm. My hand signed he is threatening my mother. When I reached page 3, my voice was shaking with rage, but it was loud, and the undersigned verifies that the Viridian Atlas Recruitment Program is a legitimate, bonded, and fully compliant labor initiative. My hands moved, fast and sharp. He is forcing me. They are slaves. This document is a trap. Do not believe it. Lorne's smile evaporated. He didn't speak my language, but he knew exactly what I was doing. He was watching a public execution. His own. Oh, enough, he roared, his face purple. You clever, arrogant. Caesar, get the papers now. His 2 tactical men lunged forward. Ronan's men raised their weapons. The air crackled. We were seconds from a firefight. Wait, I shouted, the word high and desperate. You can't, it's not a legal signature, not under duress. Lorne stopped, his men hesitating. He was a man of law, of loopholes. I had just given him one. What are you talking about? I'm compromised, I shouted, the idea coming to me, a desperate, final gambit. I am a party to the agreement. I demand a neutral, third-party interpreter to witness my signature. It's procedure without it. It's coercion. It won't be valid in any court. Lorne stared at me. his mind clearly racing. I was stalling. He knew it, but I was also right. He didn't just want my signature. He wanted it to be valid. "You're stalling," he hissed. "I'm ensuring this is all legal. It's what you want, isn't it? Gareth, patch me in. Get a certified interpreter on your own system. I'll sign it. Live with a witness. Do it by the book." This was the true goal. The one Ronan's tech team was waiting for. If they patched me into their secure communications network. Lorne snarled. He looked at his man. "Do it. Get our comms tablet. Patch into the state registry. Get an interpreter on the line. Now. She has 5 minutes." One of his men ran back to the SUV to get the equipment. The warehouse fell into a silence so profound I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. The man fumbled with the tablet, trying to get a satellite link. My bravado, the burst of adrenaline, it all drained away, leaving me hollow. I thought of my mother. What if Ronan was wrong? What if his sandstone protocol had failed? What if his team in El Paso had been caught? What if, to buy my team a few digital seconds, I had just condemned my mother to death? My breath hitched. A sound, half sob, half gasp, escaped my throat. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. Ronan moved. He didn't speak. He didn't look at Lorne. He walked to me, closing the space between us, and turned his back on them, shielding me from their view. He put his hands on my shoulders, his grip a solid, immovable weight. He leaned in, lowering his head until his forehead rested gently against mine. I could feel his breath. He wasn't shaking. He was a mountain. He was a wall. He was a silent, absolute promise in the dark. I am here. We are in this together. My own breathing, ragged and panicked, began to slow, matching his inhale, exhale. "Ronan," I whispered, a prayer against his skin. "If this goes bad, if they... Promise me you won't trade the truth for a temporary peace." His eyes, inches from mine, opened. They were dark, deep, and held no doubt. "I will never trade peace for the truth," he whispered back, his voice a rough vow. "I will only trade my peace for your truth." A new voice crackled, this one from the tiny earpiece Ronan wore, just loud enough for me to hear. It was his tech lead. "We're in. The beacon is latched. We have their entire server. PMCC is green lit. We have it all. Go, go, go." Ronan pulled back. The man whose forehead had been pressed against mine was gone. In his place was the leader of the Black Harbor Council. His face was cold, hard, and terrifying. "It's patched," Gareth Lorne shouted, walking forward, holding the tablet. "I have an interpreter from Olympia on the line. Now, Miss Salgado, sign the paper." Ronan smiled. It was the most dangerous expression I had ever seen. "She's not signing anything." Lorne's face crumpled in confusion. In that 1 second, he realized he had been played. Every second he'd spent trying to secure his legal trap, he had been walking into a digital one. "What you..." He was sputtering. "You... kill them. Kill them all. Cut the lights. Cut the lights." He dove back toward the cover of his SUV, and the world ended. The massive, humming sodium lamps popped, one after another, in a cascade of dying light. The warehouse was plunged into a thick, suffocating blackness. It was absolute. I couldn't see my own hands. I heard men shouting, the scrape of tactical boots on concrete, the metallic shing of a weapon being readied. I reached out, grasping at nothing. A brilliant, white beam of light sliced through the dark. It was Ronan. He had the flashlight from the elevator. He wasn't aiming it at Lorne. He wasn't aiming it at the gunman. He was aiming it at me. It illuminated my face, my chest, my hands, catching me in a perfect theatrical spotlight. "They're blind," Ronan's voice came from the darkness beside me, calm and lethal. "We are not. Talk to me. Nor be our torch." The flashlight beam was a clean, white stage, and I was at its center. The darkness around us was absolute, a living thing, filled with the sound of men scrambling, confused, their night vision useless against the sudden, total black. "My camera," I whispered, my hand instinctively going to the small device on my lapel. It's still live. I know. Ronan's voice came from the blackness, a solid presence beside me. Be our eyes, Noor, be our voice, tell them what's happening. My hands rose into the beam. They were shaking, but I forced them steady. They have cut the lights. We are in warehouse T7. Northland is attacking. We are trapped. In a dark van 2 blocks away, Ronan's tech lead was watching my feed. She's up. She's still streaming, but the signal is choppy. Boss, they're trying to jam us. Activate the line, Ronan spoke into his wrist. Outside, beyond the warehouse walls, the city answered. On the West Seattle Bridge, a line of 30 motorcycles, their frames wrapped in high-intensity white LEDs, roared to life. They spread out, riding in formation, a sudden, brilliant constellation against the dark skyline. They were the harbor hands, and they were creating a massive, moving wall of light, a backdrop for the entire city to see. The live stream, now picked up by local news feeds, was a chaotic, brilliant white image of my hands, set against the flashing, moving lights of the bridge in the distance. From apartments overlooking the water, from the windows of downtown high-rises, a new signal began. People, the deaf community I had reached, were turning on their lights and holding their hands up to the windows, waving them back and forth, the silent, thundering applause, a city of witnesses, all speaking my language. Gareth Lorne saw it. He saw the reflected light, the live feed playing on his own man's tablet. Jam them, he screamed in the darkness. Find a frequency, kill that feed. My earpiece hissed. Signal gone. Boss, they're pushing us off the main band. Ronan was a shadow at my side. I grabbed his arm. I didn't have to shout. I signed, my hands moving in the tight circle of the flashlight beam. Backup, Starwave Co-op, civilian satellite, Channel 4, now. Starwave, Channel 4, go, Ronan commanded. A second later, the earpiece crackled. We're back. We're on the civilian band. They can't touch us. Now, Lorne shrieked, his voice raw with animal panic. He was no longer a lawyer. He was just a thug. No capture. Stop them. Get her. Stop her hands. From 3 directions, they came, dark shapes rushing the single point of light. Ronan's team met them, Alpha and Beta, Ronan's 2 men, moved with a brutal, non-lethal grace. They weren't soldiers. They were brawlers, disciplined and precise. They moved with soft body shields and low-voltage batons. I heard the thwack of the batons, the grunt of men falling. They weren't aiming for chests or heads. They were striking wrists, elbows, knees, disarming, disabling. They were not killers. Ronan was a different kind of storm. He was a wall of motion, his flashlight beam never leaving me, his other hand a blur. He moved like a dancer, a single, fluid unit of violence, clearing the space around us. I kept signing, they are attacking, we are defending. We are at T7. Gareth Lorne is here. He's ordering them to attack. From the deepest shadow, Lorne himself emerged. He had no weapon, but his eyes were mad. He saw Ronan, engaged with 2 tactical men, and he saw me. He saw his one last chance. He lunged. He didn't go for Ronan. He went for me. I only had a second. His arm snaked around my throat, yanking me back. The flashlight beam spun wildly and then went out as Ronan dropped it to intercept. We were back in the dark, but this time, I wasn't safe. A cold, sharp line of steel pressed against my throat. A knife. Stop! Lorne screamed, his voice a ragged gasp in my ear. Stop the stream. Tell your men to stop. Calder, or I will cut her throat. I swear to God I will. The sounds of the fight stopped. The warehouse was plunged into a terrifying silence, broken only by Lorne's panicked breathing and the cold metal at my neck. This was it. I was a liability. The asset was now a hostage. I could smell his sweat, the sour scent of his absolute terror. And I remembered the island, the smell of cedar and rain, Ronan's voice, calm and patient. The move is not about strength, nor it's about gravity. It's about timing. When they hold, they are rigid. Use their weight against them. He was holding me. He was rigid. I drove my heel down, hard, onto his instep. He roared, his grip tightening, but for a fraction of a second, his weight shifted. I sank. I dropped my entire center of gravity, collapsing my knees, making myself a dead weight. His arm, locked around my neck, was pulled down. I twisted my hips, hard, toward him, not away. I brought my elbow up, smashing it into his ribs, and at the same moment, I grabbed his wrist, the one holding the knife, with both of my hands. I didn't pull. I snapped it. I heard a wet, sickening snap. He screamed. The knife clattered to the floor. His grip was gone. I spun out from under his arm, scrambling away, falling to the concrete. Lorne, his arm broken, his face a mask of agony, saw me. He lunged, a desperate, broken animal. Ronan was there. He moved between us. He didn't have a baton. He didn't have a weapon. He just met the charge. He was trying to intercept, to block. Lorne, in his blind rage, still had a knife in his other hand, a backup. He slashed wildly. Ronan couldn't stop it. The blade raked across his left shoulder, a long, deep gash. He grunted, a sharp exhalation of pain, but his momentum carried him forward. He slammed his body into Lorne, and a single, precise strike to the temple sent Lorne crumpling to the floor, unconscious. Silence. I stared. I was on my hands and knees. Ronan was standing over Lorne, breathing heavily. His hand went to his shoulder. When he pulled it away, it was covered in dark, slick blood. I couldn't move. My mind went white. The blood, the wet, dark stain spreading down his shirt. He was hurt. He was hurt for me. "Nor," he gasped. I unfroze. My fear, my panic, it all vaporized, replaced by a cold, sharp rage I didn't know I possessed. I got to my feet. I walked to him. My hands were shaking, but I lifted them. I signed, my movements jerky. Stand up. It was a plea. It was a command. He looked at me. Through the pain, a tight, grim smile touched his lips. He straightened, pulling his hand away from the wound, his body rigid with control. He nodded, and the world exploded in light. The massive, rolling bay doors of the warehouse shrieked open. Blinding white floodlights poured in, turning the darkness to day. Sirens, dozens of them. Men in dark blue windbreakers swarmed the floor. PMCC and Moru emblazoned on their backs. "Puget Major Crimes Commission," an agent yelled, his voice on a bullhorn. "We are acting as civilian legal observers at the request of the Starwave Cooperative, who reported a live satellite feed documenting a violent assault." The clean narrative, the legal cover. They swarmed past us, their weapons trained on the groaning, disarmed Northland men. They hauled Gareth Lorne to his feet, cuffing him, his broken arm dangling. "Gareth Lorne, you are under arrest, kidnapping, coercion of a federal witness, data fraud conspiracy to commit t..." Lorne, his face a ruin, saw me. He saw the tiny camera on my lapel, still active, still streaming. "You can't!" he shrieked, his voice cracking. "This is a setup. You're criminals, all of you. He's Ronan Calder. He's Black Harbor. He's just another gangster." The PMCC agent paused. The camera, held by a news crew that had arrived with them, swiveled, zooming in on me. The entire city was watching. This was the moment, the final testimony. I took a deep breath. I looked straight into the lens. "I was told to lie," I said, my voice clear and strong, my hands moving in perfect, precise sync. "I was offered bribes by the men in suits. I was threatened by them. And I was hunted by them." I turned my head, just slightly, to where Ronan stood, clutching his bleeding shoulder, a grim, steady shadow in the harsh light. "If I have to choose," I said, my gaze returning to the camera, "between the men who are lying to the entire city and the one man who told me, from the beginning, not to lie, I choose the second one, every single time." The air was filled with sirens and the sound of the ocean, the wind whipping in from the open bay. On the news feeds, on the monitors, the shot of my face was intercut with footage from helicopters, showing the silent, thundering applause, the sea of hands waving from the bridges and the windows of the city. Ronan watched me, He watched me stand there, bathed in the sodium lights, my face streaked with grime, my hands steady, proud, unbroken. He felt the hot, wet throb in his shoulder. He knew this battle was over, but he also knew, as he thought of the deep, tangled roots of Viridian Atlas and the monsters who sat above Gareth Lorne, that there was one last layer to this war, and it was still coming. The victory in the warehouse felt final. Gareth Lorne was in PMCC custody. His tactical team was disarmed, and our live stream had turned the entire city into a witness. Ronan was sitting in the Bainbridge safe house, getting stitched up by a private medic, his face pale but calm. It felt like the end. But it was too clean. Lorne was just the head of the enforcers, the real monster. Viridian Atlas was still hidden, untouched, its corporate structure intact. The PMCC had a strong case, but they didn't have the root. They didn't have the ledgers. The other shoe dropped at 3 a.m. The burner phone, the one I had come to hate, buzzed on the nightstand. Another anonymous video link. I flinched. But Ronan, his arm now secured in a heavy black sling, just nodded from the other side of the room. Play it. It wasn't a deep fake. It was a man, maybe 50. His face puffy and slick with sweat. He was sitting in a dark car, the camera on his phone shaking. I recognized him from the boardroom mediation. A senior Viridian manager named Harris. "They're scrubbing," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Lorne is gone, so they're scrubbing everyone. They're shredding everything. They're not going to let me walk away. I'm a loose end." He held up a flash drive. "I have it, the real thing. Not the server core Lorne was moving. This is the master ledger, the offshore accounts, the payments to Northland, the real recruitment schedules for the last 5 years. It's the whole kingdom." His eyes were wild with terror. "They won't just kill me. They have my son. They took him. A company wellness retreat this morning. It's not a retreat. It's a cage. Please, I saw your stream. They're listening to my calls. Please, get my boy, get my family out. You can have the drive. You can have everything." I looked at Ronan. The medic had finished. The moral line we had walked was suddenly twisting. Harris was not a good man. He was a rat fleeing a sinking ship. A man who had only found a conscience when his own life was on the line. "It's a great choice. Nor," Ronan said, his voice low and tired. "We save a snake to kill a bigger one." "No," I said, and the clarity of it cut through my fatigue. "It's not gray at all. It's the only choice. This isn't about saving him. It's about saving his son. The goal has always been to protect the victims. His son is a victim. We save the child. The PMCC can sort out Harris's crimes after he testifies." Ronan looked at me for a long moment, the exhaustion in his eyes clearing, replaced by that familiar, sharp resolve. "He's dirty, but his son is clean. I agree." He stood up, wincing as he settled the sling. "Where?" "Ether Mall," I said, reading the text that followed the video. "The rooftop parking garage. Noon tomorrow. He says it's the only place public enough to feel safe." "Noon," Ronan repeated, his voice flat. "In a wide-open concrete field. It's not a safe house. It's a kill box." The Ether Mall garage roof was a concrete desert. 5 acres of painted lines and rain puddles under a heavy, gray sky. The air was thick with a fine mist. It was a perfect sniper's roost. Ronan was 2 levels below, in the command van, his arm forcing him into a strategic role. He was watching a dozen different camera feeds and had a direct line to a PMCC tactical team waiting on the 4th floor. The whole operation was live-streamed again, this time to a private, secure server for Moru and the PMCC. No public heroics, just evidence. I was the one on the roof. I walked out into the open, my hands in my pockets. 2 of the harbor hands flanking me, pretending to be shoppers. "He's not at the elevator," I murmured into the mic hidden in my sleeve. "He's late," Ronan's voice crackled, tinny and distant in my ear. "Or he's already taken. Scan the perimeter. Where is the threat?" My eyes swept the rooftops of the buildings across the street. Nothing. Too far. I looked at the far end of our own garage, the stairwell housing, dark and shadowed, a window. And in that window, a single, tiny glint of reflected light, a scope. "Sniper," I said, my voice low, my heart suddenly a cold, heavy stone. "East stairwell, rooftop access. He's got the entire roof locked down." "My team is moving to intercept," Ronan said, his voice tight. "But he has the high ground. He's just waiting for Harris to show his face." At that moment, the sky opened. The mist turned into a full, driving Seattle downpour. The rain hit the concrete roof with a sound like static, a deafening, white roar. I lifted my binoculars. Focusing on the sniper's nest, I saw him. He was hidden, but the rain was distracting him. He flinched, his head turning, his free hand coming up to tap his earpiece. The noise, the sudden, percussive roar on the roof, was interfering with his hearing. It was a sensory blind spot. "Ronan," I said, my voice urgent. "The rain. He's distracted by the noise. He's pulling his focus. We have to use the sound." "How do we time it?" he asked. "I'll tell you," I said. "The rain is in waves. Wait for my signal. Get the team ready." "My people are in position with the smoke flags. PMCC is on the 4th floor. On my go. Cascadia Watch is airborne. Just in case. We are ready for your signal. Nor." I watched the sniper. He settled, aiming again. The rain eased for a moment, and so did he. I waited. The wind shifted. I could feel the pressure change. "Now, Ronan," I shouted, "hit it now. All teams, go smoke." From behind 2 massive ventilation units, Ronan's team ignited thermal smoke flags. Thick, red, billowing clouds erupted. A wall of crimson confusion that swept across the sniper's field of vision. "Harris, move," Ronan's voice boomed over the garage loudspeakers. The elevator dinged. Harris burst out, clutching his briefcase, his face a mask of terror. "My son, where is my son?" "He's safe," I yelled, running toward him. "PMCC has him. He was picked up 10 minutes ago now. Give me the drive." A single, sharp crack split the air. The sniper was firing blind, guessing, shooting through the smoke. I saw Harris's eyes go wide. He was aiming for Harris. I didn't see Ronan. He must have come from the stairwell. He moved faster than I thought was humanly possible for a man with one arm in a sling. He hit me. His solid body slammed into mine, a brutal, saving tackle. "Nor," he yelled. We hit the wet concrete, skidding, rolling, and slammed hard into the low concrete barrier at the very edge of the roof. The city skyline spun wildly. I landed on top of him. I gasped. The air knocked from my lungs. "Ronan?" He didn't answer. He just grunted, his face pale, his eyes clamped shut in agony. "Ronan," I pushed myself up. The front of his shirt, on his other shoulder, was dark, a deep, wet, spreading stain of red. He'd been hit. He'd taken the bullet that was meant for Harris. "No," I whispered. My hands flew to my mouth. "No, no, not again." He opened his eyes. They were hazy with pain, but they found mine. He was bleeding out on a roof in the rain. My hands, slick with his blood, began to shake. A tremor so violent I couldn't stop it. But they moved. They found their language. Stay. With me. A new sound, deeper than the rain, cut through the air. The whump, whump, whump of helicopter blades. A white civilian helicopter. Cascadia Watch on its side, rose up from below, its massive floodlight hitting the sniper's nest, pinning him in a light so bright there was no shadow left to hide in. "This is the Puget Major Crimes Commission," the garage loudspeaker blared. "You are surrounded. Throw down your weapon. You are under arrest." The sniper's rifle clattered onto the concrete. It was over. Agents swarmed the roof, cuffing the sniper, securing Harris. An agent took the flash drive from Harris's trembling hand. "Read the confession," the agent commanded, aloud, and sign it, for the cameras. As Harris's thin voice began to list the account numbers, the shipping manifests, the damning dates of the forced training, my world narrowed to one person. I was kneeling in a puddle of water and blood, my hands pressed hard against Ronan's shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. He looked at me. A pained, grim smile touched his lips. "I promised you," he gasped. "A rainy balcony." The balcony at Bainbridge Sound was quiet. The rain was a fine, silver mist. The lights of the city glittered, a safe distance away. The only sounds were the drip of water from the redwood eaves and the slow, steady rhythm of the waves. Ronan sat in the chair, his shirt off. His left arm was in its sling. His right shoulder was a landscape of white gauze and medical tape. I finished wrapping the last bandage, my hands steady now. "That's twice," I said, my voice soft. "I stopped counting," he murmured. His skin was cold, but his eyes were clear. I secured the bandage, but I didn't move away. I stayed, kneeling in front of him, my hands resting on his knees. He reached up with his good hand, the one that wasn't in a sling, and touched my cheek. His fingers were calloused and warm. "It's over, Noor," he said. "It's over," I agreed. He pulled me gently forward. He kissed me. It wasn't the desperate, adrenaline-fueled kiss from the elevator or the hesitant, questioning kiss from our first night here. It was slow. It was deep. It was permanent. It was the end of running. I rested my forehead against his, our breath mingling in the cold air. "No more running," I whispered. He closed his eyes, a small, true smile on his face. We rebuild. We did. The Calder Relief Fund merged with my new Interpreters Without Borders program, dedicated to training a new generation to fight linguistic manipulation. Black Harbor, under Ronan's leadership, began the long, painful, and public process of becoming a fully transparent shipping enterprise, and the PMCC, using our evidence, signed a new charter protecting deaf witnesses. On the wall of my new office, the one overlooking the clean, busy port, there is a framed photograph. It's grainy, taken from a security camera, blurred by rain. It's just a dark street, a woman caught in a moment of terror, and the open door of a black sedan, waiting, the start of a promise to protect the truth and to protect each other. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so please drop a comment below to share your thoughts. Subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people.